A venture capitalist paid $400 for a machine that did one job, and did it worse than a human hand. It's 2016. Silicon Valley's in a fever dream. Everyone's chasing disruption like it's a lottery ticket. Juicero emerges from the hype machine with $120 million in funding, a sleek design, and a promise: cold-pressed juice on demand. The machine was gorgeous. I'll give them that. Minimalist, futuristic. The kind of thing you display on your kitchen counter like it's a Rolex. But here's where the story gets interesting. And I don't mean interesting in a good way. Let's back up. Who were these people? Juicero was founded by Doug Evans, a former Tesla engineer with the kind of resume that makes VCs salivate. The man had pedigree. He had vision. He had what looked like a real problem to solve, making cold-pressed juice accessible to people who didn't want to spend 20 minutes manually pressing fruit. Sounds reasonable, right? Except, and I hate coincidences, the juice packs came pre-made. They came from suppliers. The machine didn't actually extract juice. It just squeezed what was already there. Think about that for a second. You're paying $400, some models went higher, for a machine that squeezes pre-made juice packs. A task a child could do. A task your hands could do. Better, faster, free. But the marketing was immaculate. The design was immaculate. The story was immaculate. And the funding kept flowing like juice through a very expensive press. Here's the pattern I've seen before. A founder identifies a real problem: convenience, quality, lifestyle. They build a beautiful solution. They tell a compelling story about why their solution is revolutionary. And then this is the part that always gets me: they raise enough money that nobody asks the obvious questions. Like, does this thing actually need to be smart? Does it need Wi-Fi? Why does it cost more than a used car? Juicero's machine had Wi-Fi. It had Bluetooth. It had sensors. It had an app that tracked your juice consumption. The app could disable the machine remotely if you didn't have a valid subscription to juice packs. Think about that. You own the hardware. You can't use it without permission from a company server. This wasn't a juicer. This was a rent-seeking Trojan horse dressed up in Scandinavian minimalism. The investors ate it up. Kleiner, Google Ventures. These aren't amateur hour players. These are the people who fund actual world-changing technology, and yet somehow they looked at a Wi-Fi-enabled juice squeezer and saw the future. I've worked cases where the evidence was obvious and people still couldn't see it. This felt the same. By early 2016, Juicero had expanded to Los Angeles, San Francisco, and New York. Celebrity investors climbed on board. The company was valued at $400 million. They were planning an IPO. They were going to change how America consumed juice. Everything looked perfect from the outside, but perfect is always a warning sign. Then in April 2016, Bloomberg did what Bloomberg does. They tested the machine. They squeezed the juice packs by hand. You know what happened? The juice came out just as fast, just as much volume, just as clean. The $400 machine was functionally identical to using your hands. Bloomberg published it. The headline was simple, and it detonated. The response was immediate. Memes flooded Twitter, jokes on Reddit. The story went from revolutionary startup to cautionary tale in about 48 hours. Customers who'd already bought machines started demanding refunds. Retailers pulled the product from shelves. The narrative flipped, and in tech, once the narrative flips, it's over. Doug Evans didn't go quietly. He claimed the machine was about more than just efficiency. It was about consistency, precision, quality control. It was about the ritual. It was about the experience. These are the words you say when your product has no defensible purpose. I've heard them before. They never land. The company tried to pivot. They launched new models. They adjusted pricing. They emphasized the subscription juice packs as if that was the real business all along. But nobody was listening anymore. In November 2016, just 8 months after the Bloomberg article, Juicero shut down operations. Employees were laid off. The company was liquidated. $400 million in valuation evaporated like juice in the sun. But here's what interests me most. The investors didn't lose their money. They moved on to the next thing. Doug Evans landed at another startup. The engineers found new jobs. The only people who lost were the customers who bought the machine and the early employees who believed in the vision. The system protected itself. Juicero became a punchline, a symbol of Silicon Valley excess. A cautionary tale about hype, design, and the power of a good story to override basic logic. But that's not quite right. Juicero wasn't a failure of the market. It was a success of the con. The con worked perfectly right up until it didn't. So what's the real story? It's not about a broken product. It's about an ecosystem that rewards confidence over competence. It's about investors who are so desperate to find the next big thing that they stop asking questions. It's about founders who believe their own mythology. And it's about a culture that valorizes disruption so much that we stopped asking. Disruption of what, exactly? Juicero didn't fail because the machine was bad. Juicero failed because the story was exposed. The moment people realized they could squeeze the pack themselves, the entire value proposition collapsed. Not because the juice was different, but because the illusion was broken. And in an economy built on illusions, that's fatal. The machine itself still exists in landfills and second-hand marketplaces. A $400 reminder that hype, no matter how well designed, is still just air. And air, unlike juice, doesn't squeeze very well. You asked how a smart juicer ran out of juice and credibility. The answer is simple. It never had juice to begin with. It only had a story. And stories, I've learned, don't survive contact with reality. Subscribe. Every week we expose the billion-dollar failures that Silicon Valley forgot to tell you about.